I never thought desperation had a smell, until that night in the hospital corridor. Antiseptic mixed with something metallic, something final. My brother lay beyond those swinging doors, his lungs failing, his body a battlefield I couldn't fight on. The surgeon's words still echoed. Asterisk experimental treatment, out of network, $70,000 upfront asterisk. I had $300 in my account and a maxed credit card that mocked me every time I opened my wallet. That's when the woman found me. She wore a charcoal suit too expensive for a hospital waiting room and carried a leather portfolio that whispered money. Her heels clicked purposefully across the linoleum until she stood before me, her perfume cutting through the disinfectant haze. "You're Mara Castellano," she said, not a question, a statement of fact that made my skin prickle. I nodded, too exhausted to wonder how she knew my name. She sat beside me, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "I represent a private household seeking immediate staff. Discretion is paramount. Compensation is substantial." My heart lurched. How substantial? "Enough to cover your brother's treatment." "All of it. The experimental protocol, the aftercare, everything." She slid a cream envelope from her portfolio, the paper thick and rich between my trembling fingers. "The position begins tonight. Room and board included. You'd live on site for the duration of your contract." I should have asked more questions. How long? Where? What kind of work? But when she named the signing bonus enough to greenlight Marco's surgery before dawn, my desperation drowned out every rational thought. The agency office was 5 blocks away, wedged between a pawn shop and a closed dry cleaner. Upstairs, in a room that smelled of old wood and expensive cologne, I signed page after page of dense legal text, non-disclosure agreements, behavioral clauses, something about absolute obedience to household protocol. My hand cramped, but I kept writing my name, over and over, while the recruiter watched with eyes that never blinked. "This isn't like other employment contracts," she said as I signed the final page. "You're entering a position of trust. The terms are binding." "I understand," I whispered, though I didn't. "Not really." She smiled then, and it didn't reach her eyes. "Breaking this contract isn't just breach of employment, Miss Castellano. It's impossible." She tapped the document with one manicured nail. "You can never walk away from this oath." The pen's ink seemed to burn where it touched my skin, a phantom heat that faded as quickly as it came. I told myself it was exhaustion, fear, the fluorescent lights playing tricks. I told myself a lot of things that night. By morning, Marco was in surgery, and I was gone. The car arrived at midnight, a black sedan with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. The driver said nothing when he opened the door, just gestured for me to enter. When I hesitated, he produced a silk blindfold. "Protocol, miss. All new staff." My stomach nodded, but I'd already signed, already taken the money, already saved my brother's life. So I tied the blindfold over my eyes and let the darkness swallow me whole. The drive lasted forever, and no time at all. I felt every turn, every shift in speed, the road changing from smooth pavement to gravel that crunched beneath the tires. Sea air crept through the vents, salt and brine and something wilder. We were climbing, winding up along what felt like a coastal road, the kind that hugged cliffs and promised dangerous beauty. When the car finally stopped, hands not unkind, but firm, guided me out. Gravel became marble beneath my feet. I heard gates closing behind us, heavy and final, the sound of locks engaging with mechanical precision. Only when I was inside did they remove the blindfold. The mansion stole my breath. Vaulted ceilings stretched impossibly high, chandeliers dripping crystal, light across floors so polished I could see my reflection pale and small and out of place. Curved staircases swept upward like frozen waterfalls. Artwork that belonged in museums hung on walls papered in silk. It was beautiful the way a cathedral was beautiful, designed to make you feel insignificant. A man in a black suit too fit, too alert to be just household staff approached with a tablet. His face was professionally blank, but his eyes catalogued me with the efficiency of a scanner. "Mara Castellano, new house staff." He swiped through screens without waiting for confirmation. "You'll be briefed on protocols. All residents and staff operate under Mr. DeLuca's laws. First law, discretion. You see nothing, hear nothing, speak nothing beyond these walls. Second law, obedience. Instructions are not suggestions. Third law, boundaries. Certain areas are forbidden. Violation results in immediate termination. The way he said times termination times made my mouth go dry. Cameras monitor all common areas, he continued, gesturing to black orbs embedded in the ceiling. Biometric locks on restricted doors. Curfew is 11 p.m. You'll find your uniform and schedule in your quarters. Where am I? I finally managed. What city? His expression didn't flicker. Welcome to Villa de Luca, miss. You won't be needing a city anymore. The driver who'd brought me was already gone. The gates I'd heard closing, I couldn't even see them from here. And as the guard led me deeper into the mansion, past more cameras and locked doors and hallways that stretched like elegant traps, I understood what the recruiter had meant. I wasn't hired. I was collected. The door to the servants' wing locked behind me with a soft, certain click. They woke me before sunrise for orientation. A housekeeper named Mrs. Voss, gray-haired, granite-faced, handed me a uniform of black and white that fit perfectly, as if they'd known my measurements before I'd known this place existed. She walked me through my duties with the warmth of a drill sergeant. Laundry protocols, meal service procedures, how to move through the mansion like a ghost. You'll meet Mr. DeLuca at breakfast, she said, smoothing invisible wrinkles from my collar. He prefers silence during meals, eye contact only when addressed. Never, ever ask personal questions. What's he like? I asked before I could stop myself. Mrs. Voss's hands stilled. For a moment, something almost human flickered across her face. Pity, maybe, or warning. Mr. DeLuca is exacting and very private. If you're smart, you'll remember that. The dining hall was designed to intimidate a table long enough to seat 20 beneath a chandelier that cost more than most houses. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the sea, turning everything gold and crystalline. It was breathtaking. It was terrifying. He sat at the head of the table, perfectly still. Mr. DeLuca was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of face that belonged on magazine covers or wanted posters, sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, dark hair swept back with careless precision. He wore a three-piece suit in charcoal gray, a watch glinting at his wrist that probably cost more than my entire life before this moment. But it was his eyes that trapped me, dark and fathomless and far too knowing, the eyes of someone who'd seen the world's ugliest truths and stopped being surprised. A scar traced his left temple, pale against olive skin, a story written in violence. He didn't look up when I entered, just continued reading his newspaper with the focus of a man who'd trained himself to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing. Mrs. Voss nudged me forward. I approached with the tea service, hands trembling despite my best efforts. The silence was absolute, except for the rustle of paper, and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. I poured, Earl Grey, steam rising, between us. The cup was delicate porcelain, probably older than I was, and my hands were shaking. The cup slipped. Tea splashed across the table, a spreading stain of amber that soaked the edge of his newspaper. My heart stopped. Mrs. Voss made a small, horrified sound behind me. Then Mr. DeLuca laughed. It wasn't a warm sound. It was cold amusement, the laugh of a cat with a mouse. He set down his ruined newspaper and finally looked at me, really looked, his gaze traveling from my face down to my trembling hands and back up again with deliberate slowness. Nervous? His voice was smoke and whiskey, cultured but edged with something dangerous. I'm sorry, Mr. DeLuca. He raised one hand, silencing me instantly. What's your name? Mara Castellano, sir. Mara. He tested it, rolling the syllables like wine. Do you know why you're here, Mara? The question felt like a trap. I'm here to work, sir. No. He leaned back in his chair, that dark gaze never leaving mine. You're here because you signed a contract, because you made a promise, because you owe a debt that's now mine to collect. He tapped his fingers against the table. Once, twice, a rhythm that felt like a countdown. You'll serve me until I release you, and I don't release people easily. The invisible collar I'd felt since signing tightened around my throat. He smiled then, and it was worse than his laugh. Clean this up. And Mara, next time your hands shake, let me know beforehand. I prefer my tea in the cup, not on the table. Yes, sir. As I knelt to clean the spill, I saw his watch up close, engraved on the platinum case, in letters small but deliberate, **, oath above all **. I didn't understand it then. I would. The servants' wing was a world unto itself, narrow corridors and small rooms carved from what had probably once been storage space. I shared quarters with Lena, a girl maybe a year older than me with bitten nails and eyes that darted like trapped birds. She was polite but distant until our second night, when she finally whispered, "You're in the room that belonged to Elena." I looked up from unpacking my meager belongings. "Who's Elena?" Lena's face went pale. "The last girl. The one who left. Broke the rules." Lena hugged herself, rubbing her arms as if cold despite the warm night. She went into the East Wing after curfew, tried to access Mr. DeLuca's private office. Security found her. She swallowed hard. No one's seen her since. My blood turned to ice. What happened to her? I don't know. Maybe she's fine. Maybe she's just somewhere else. But the tremor in Lena's voice said she believed no such thing. "There are cameras everywhere, Mara. Biometric locks on every important door. They track our movements, our schedules, everything. This place, it's not a house. It's a cage dressed in silk." That night, I lay awake counting cameras. I found 3 just in our small room, tiny black orbs embedded in corners, always watching. When I finally slept, I dreamed of contracts written in disappearing ink and gates that locked from the outside. I woke to alarms screaming through the mansion. Lena bolted upright, her face white in the emergency lighting that had snapped on. Someone's entering the grounds. Unauthorized. Through our window, I saw shadows moving, men in black, sweeping across the manicured lawns with military precision. Guards shouted into radios. Somewhere, dogs barked. The beautiful mansion transformed in seconds, revealing what it had always been beneath the luxury. A fortress preparing for war. "Get down," Lena hissed, pulling me away from the window. "If there's an intrusion, staff protocol is to hide and stay silent." "What kind of place is this?" I whispered, even though I was beginning to understand. Lena's eyes were wet with tears she wouldn't shed. "The kind where you don't ask questions. The kind where the last girl vanished." She gripped my hand hard enough to hurt. "Stay invisible, Mara. It's the only way to survive." The alarms blared for 20 minutes before going silent. By morning, there was no evidence anything had happened. The lawns were perfect, the guards back to their posts, the mansion serene and beautiful and suffocating. But I'd seen the truth. I'd seen the guns. And I'd seen Mr. DeLuca through a window during the chaos, standing calm in the storm, directing his guards with the cold efficiency of a general commanding troops. Whatever I'd walked into, it wasn't a household. It was a kingdom, and I was no longer free. 2 weeks passed in a strange, suffocating routine. I learned to move silently through the mansion's halls, to anticipate Mr. DeLuca's needs before he voiced them, to become invisible in plain sight. He barely spoke to me except to issue instructions, but I felt his attention constantly, a pressure against my skin whenever I entered a room he occupied. Then came the gala. Mrs. Voss appeared in the servants' wing at noon, her expression even more severe than usual. "Mara, you're needed in Mr. DeLuca's quarters. He's preparing for the evening event and requires assistance." My stomach dropped. "Why me?" "I don't know." "Because he asked for you specifically." Now, his private suite was on the 3rd floor, in the forbidden East Wing where Elena had vanished. The biometric lock clicked open when Mrs. Voss pressed her thumb to it, and she ushered me inside before retreating, leaving me alone in a space that smelled of expensive cologne and power. The room was masculine elegance, dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with volumes in multiple languages. Through the open bedroom door, I saw Mr. DeLuca standing before a mirror, shrugging on a dress shirt. "Come here," he said without turning around. I moved on autopilot, my heart hammering. Up close, he was overwhelming, tall enough that I had to tilt my head back, broad-shouldered beneath the crisp white fabric of his shirt. He'd shaved, his jaw sharp enough to draw blood, and the scar at his temple seemed more prominent in the afternoon light. "Cufflinks," he instructed, holding out his wrists. My fingers fumbled with the platinum links, so close I could feel his body heat, smell the cedar and spice of his cologne. His pulse beat steadily at his wrists, controlled, unhurried, unlike my own racing heart. "You're afraid of me," he observed, his voice low enough that it felt like a secret between us. "No, sir." Liar. But there was something almost amused in his tone. "Smart girl. Fear keeps you careful." He shifted, angling toward me, and suddenly we were two close predator and prey, his dark eyes searching mine for something I didn't understand. "Do you know what tonight is, Mara?" "A gala, sir. A performance. I play the civilized businessman while men who want me dead smile and shake my hand. I wear expensive suits and drink expensive wine and pretend we're all friends." His smile was sharp enough to cut. "And people like you make it possible. The invisible ones who pour the drinks and carry the secrets." "I don't know any secrets, sir." "Don't you?" He reached up, his fingers barely grazing my chin, tilting my face toward the light. The touch was electric, forbidden, and over in a heartbeat. "You know I'm not what I pretend to be. You've seen the guards, the locks, the protocols. You're not stupid, little Oathkeeper, you've figured it out." The nickname times Oathkeeper times landed like a brand. "I don't understand," I whispered, though I was beginning to. "You signed a contract, an oath." His hand dropped, but the heat of his touch lingered. "In my world, oaths are everything. Break them, and you break yourself. Keep them." He stepped back, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced ease. "Keep them, and you might survive." He dismissed me then, but as I reached the door, his voice stopped me cold. "Mara, if you hear anything, tonight anything at all, you forget it by morning. Understood?" "Yes, sir." But I didn't forget, because that night, helping to serve champagne in the ballroom, while men in tuxedos laughed too loud and women dripped diamonds, I overheard Mr. DeLuca speaking to a man with silver hair and shark's eyes. "The Marchetti problem needs resolution," the man said quietly. "Before Sunday." Mr. DeLuca's response was even quieter, but I was close enough, invisible enough to hear. "It's handled. The cleanup is scheduled for Saturday night." Cleanup. The word hung in my mind like poison. I knew, somewhere deep in my bones, that he wasn't talking about housekeeping. I was working for a killer. The attack came 2 nights later. I'd fallen asleep reviewing the evening's events, Mr. DeLuca's cold efficiency, the whispered conversations about territories and shipments and people who needed handling. I was trapped in a nightmare dressed as luxury, and I had no idea how to wake up. The explosion woke me instead. The mansion shook, windows rattling in their frames. Lena screamed. Emergency lights flooded our room in red, and somewhere, alarms shrieked warnings. I stumbled to the window and saw hellmen in tactical gear streaming through breached sections of the wall, gunfire lighting up the darkness like deadly fireflies. "They're inside," Lena sobbed. "Oh God, they're inside the house." The door to our quarters slammed open. A guard I didn't recognize grabbed Lena and another girl, shoving them toward the emergency stairs. "Safe room. Now. All staff." "Wait, Mara." Lena reached for me, but the guard was already pushing them away. And then another explosion rocked the west wing and the lights went out completely. I ran. Instinct drove me away from the sounds of gunfire, deeper into the mansion's east wing. I knew it was forbidden. I knew Elena had vanished for less, but survival has no rules, and I was prey running from predators I couldn't even. I found myself in a section I didn't recognize, marble hallways lined with closed doors, paintings of stern-faced men watching my panicked flight. The sounds of battle echoed behind me, growing closer. I tried a door locked. Another locked. A third opened into a study, dark and rich with the smell of leather and paper. I slipped inside, closing the door as softly as my shaking hands allowed, and turned to find Mr. DeLuca, standing by the window, gun in hand, watching the grounds burn. He looked at me without surprise, as if he'd been expecting me. "You should be in the safe room." I couldn't, the guard didn't. My words tangled in terror. "Get down." His voice cut through my panic, commanding and absolute. I dropped behind the massive desk as he moved to the door, positioning himself with the practiced efficiency of a soldier. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even rattled. This was his element, violence and chaos, and the sharp edge of survival. Footsteps pounded in the hallway outside, voices shouting in Italian words I didn't understand but recognized as threats. The door exploded inward, wood splintering as 3 men in black tactical gear stormed inside. What happened next defied comprehension. Mr. DeLuca moved like liquid death, 1 shot, 2, 3, each finding its mark with surgical precision. Bodies dropped, blood spattered across priceless carpet. He reloaded without looking, his movements so practiced they were almost beautiful in their efficiency. But one attacker got through, tackling him from the side. They crashed into the bookshelf, volumes cascading down like paper rain. I saw the attacker's knife flash, saw it arc toward Mr. DeLuca's throat, and I moved without thinking. I grabbed a bronze bookend from the desk and swung with all my strength, connecting with the attacker's skull. The crack was sickening. The man dropped. Mr. DeLuca stared at me, blood streaking his face, something unreadable in his dark eyes. You. The windows exploded. He covered me with his body as glass rained down, his weight driving me to the floor, his arms caging me against the blast. I felt his heart hammering against my back, felt his breath hot against my neck. Fire bloomed outside, turning night to day. Someone was screaming, maybe me. Then silence. Terrible, ringing silence. He pulled back slowly, checking me for injuries with hands that were surprisingly gentle despite being covered in blood. Are you hurt? I couldn't speak, could only shake my head. Good. He stood, helping me up with a grip that was firm but careful. Through the broken windows, I saw his guards securing the grounds, dragging bodies away from sight. The mansion was wounded but standing, and the battle was over. Mr. DeLuca looked at me, really looked, something shifting in his expression. You saved my life. I didn't think. You acted. He reached out, his thumb brushing soot from my cheek. Loyal little oathkeeper. The words were soft, almost tender, which made them more frightening than any threat. You belong here now, whether you want to or not. I knew he was right. I'd crossed a line written in blood. There was no going back to invisible servitude, no pretending I was just a maid in the wrong place. I'd become part of this world, his world, and the oath I'd signed without understanding had finally shown its teeth. As guards escorted me away, I glanced back to see Mr. DeLuca standing amid the ruins of his study, watching me leave with eyes that promised I'd never truly leave at all. The cage had locked, and I'd helped seal it myself. They kept me in a guest suite that night, no longer the servants' quarters, but not quite freedom. A guard was posted outside. For your protection, Mrs. Voss said, but I understood what she meant. Protection from leaving. The next morning, Mr. DeLuca summoned me to his office. It was on the second floor, overlooking the ocean, all dark wood, and leather chairs and the subtle scent of cigars. He sat behind a desk that looked carved from a single piece of mahogany, his suit immaculate again, no evidence of the previous night's violence except for a fresh bandage at his temple. Across from him sat a man in wire-rimmed glasses, too polished, too precise to be anything but a lawyer. Sit, Mr. DeLuca instructed. I sat, my hands folded in my lap to hide their trembling. The lawyer opened a folder, pulling out documents I recognized with a sinking heart. My contract, the pages I'd signed without reading, my desperation preserved in ink and legal jargon. Miss Castellano, the lawyer began, his voice dry as dust. Do you recall the terms of your employment agreement? Some of it, yes. Allow me to clarify the relevant clause. He adjusted his glasses, reading aloud. The employee agrees to provide exclusive service for the duration of the life debt period, with termination of contract possible only upon completion of said debt or formal release by the contracting party. He looked up. Are you aware of what constitutes the life debt in your case? My mouth was sand. My brother's medical expenses. Partially correct. Mr. DeLuca leaned forward, his dark eyes pinning me in place. Your brother's treatment was arranged and funded before you arrived here, Mara. The debt was satisfied before you walked through my gates. The room tilted. Then why? Because the debt isn't financial. It never was. He nodded to the lawyer, who produced another document, this one old, dated months before I'd ever heard of Villa DeLuca. An invoice from the hospital. A payment record in my brother's name. The benefactor listed simply as Times DeLuca Enterprises *. I saved your brother's life, Mr. DeLuca said quietly. Not when you signed the contract. Months ago, when his condition first became critical. I paid for the experimental treatment that kept him alive long enough for you to be recruited. The world dissolved into fragments. Why? I didn't even know you. No, but I knew you. He stood, moving around the desk with the grace of a panther circling prey. Or rather, I knew times of times you, your family, your situation, your desperation. He stopped in front of me, too close, overwhelming. In my world, Mara, loyalty is currency. I invest in people who have the capacity for it. I saved your brother, then offered you a way to repay that debt, a way that put you exactly where I needed you. You used me, I whispered. I gave you a choice. His voice was soft, deadly. You could have walked away from the contract offer. Let your brother die. Refused to sign. But you didn't, because you're loyal. Because you'd do anything for the people you love. He crouched down, meeting my eyes at level. That's why you're here. Not as a maid, as an asset. The lawyer cleared his throat. The life debt bond, Miss Castellano, means your service is tied to Mr. DeLuca's protection. He preserves your life and the lives of those you love. In return, you remain loyal to his household. The contract is unbreakable except through mutual release, which, as you can see, Mr. DeLuca has not granted. How long? My voice cracked. How long am I trapped here? Mr. DeLuca's expression didn't change. Until I decide you're free. Could be a year, could be forever. He straightened, returning to his desk. Your life is mine to guard or end. That's the oath you took. That's the debt you owe. I thought of Marco, alive and healing because of this man. I thought of my signature on page after page of binding agreements. I thought of Elena, the girl who'd tried to break the rules and vanished without a trace. What if I run? Your brother is currently in a rehabilitation facility in the city. Mr. DeLuca said it casually, like commenting on the weather. Very good care. Very accessible. And your aunt, she still lives in that apartment on 7th Street, doesn't she? Works at the black grocery store on weekends? The threat was crystal clear without him saying another word. My family, the people I'd sold myself to protect, were his leverage, his insurance policy, his chains. You're a monster, I breathed. Yes, he agreed without hesitation. But I'm a monster who keeps his word. I promised to save your brother. I did. I promised you protection. You have it. He tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle he was solving. And now you'll keep your promise. You'll stay. You'll serve. You'll be the loyal little oath keeper I invested in. The lawyer gathered his documents and left, abandoning me to the wreckage of my illusions. Mr. DeLuca poured himself a drink whiskey, amber and expensive, and regarded me over the rim of his glass. You saved my life last night. That means something in my world. It means you've proven your value beyond the contract. I could make your service here easier, more comfortable, or I could remind you daily what happens to people who displease me. He set down his glass. Which would you prefer? I wanted to scream, to rage, to tell him I'd rather die than stay in this gilded prison. But Marco's face floated in my mind, his smile, his laughter, his chance at a life I'd bought with my freedom. I'll stay, I whispered. I'll keep the oath. Good girl. He smiled, and it was worse than any threat. Dismissed. I stood on shaking legs and walked to the door, each step feeling like surrender. Mara. I stopped, hand on the doorknob. Welcome to the family. The words followed me down the hallway, into the elevator, back to my new room that was larger and prettier, and just as much a cage as the servants' quarters had been. I collapsed on the bed, and finally let the tears come silent, useless tears for the girl I'd been before I signed my life away. The oath wasn't just words on paper. It was a collar, a brand, a chain I'd welded around my own neck. And the man holding the key had just made it clear. He'd never let me go. Days blurred into weeks. My new role in the household remained undefined, too visible to be just staff, too subordinate to be anything else. I still wore the uniform, still served meals, but now I attended meetings, stood silent in Mr. DeLuca's office while he conducted business that turned my blood cold. I learned his world through observation. Territories marked on maps like kingdoms, shipments tracked with military precision, names spoken in tones that ranged from respect to fear to promises of violence. He ran an empire from this coastal mansion, an empire built on fear and loyalty, and the kind of power that made governments look the other way. And somehow, impossibly, I learned him too. The way he took his coffee black, no sugar, in the specific porcelain cup his grandmother had brought from Sicily. The scar on his left temple came from a knife fight when he was 17, defending his younger sister from a rival family. He spoke 4 languages fluently and played piano when he thought no one was listening, classical pieces that transformed him from predator to poet. He was a monster, but he was a complicated monster, and that made it harder to hate him the way I wanted to. One evening, after a particularly brutal phone call that ended with shouted threats in Italian, he found me in the library. I'd taken to spending my free hours there, losing myself in novels about people who escaped impossible situations. He didn't speak at first, just poured himself a drink and stood by the window watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. "Do you ever wonder what it's like?" he finally asked. "To have real freedom?" The question stunned me. "You're asking me? You're the one keeping me prisoner." "Am I?" He turned, and in the dying light, he looked younger, tired, almost human. "I haven't left these grounds without armed guards in 8 years, Mara. I can't walk down a street without watching for assassins. Can't trust anyone. Outside my carefully vetted circle. Can't fall in love, have a family, live a normal life because the moment I show weakness, I'm dead." He took a long drink. "So tell me, which of us is really free?" I didn't have an answer. He crossed to where I sat, sinking into the chair across from me with a weariness he never showed in public. "I didn't choose this life. It was given to me by blood, my father's legacy, my family's empire. I was 22 when he died, and I inherited everything, including the enemies and debts and responsibilities." His laugh was bitter. "I wanted to be an architect, design buildings instead of command soldiers. But you don't walk away from this world. You don't retire from being a DeLuca. Then why make me part of it?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why trap me here when you hate your own cage?" His eyes met mine, and something in them made my breath catch. "Because loyalty is the only currency I can trust. And you signed an oath, risked yourself, saved my life without thinking about the cost. That's rarer than you know." He leaned forward, close enough that I could see gold flecks in his dark irises. "Everyone in my world wants something from me. Power, money, protection. But you just wanted to save your brother. That kind of love, that kind of loyalty, I need it. I need people I can trust not to put a bullet in my back. So, I'm your insurance policy. You're my oath keeper." He said it like a title, like something sacred. "And maybe, if you stay long enough, you'll understand why that matters." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Rain began to fall, drumming against the windows, and for a moment we just sat there, captor and captive, master and servant, two people trapped in different cages, finding unexpected understanding in the spaces between bars. "I still hate you," I whispered. "I know." He smiled, sad and genuine. "But you don't have to. You just have to stay." The moment shattered when his phone buzzed an urgent message that transformed him back into the cold, controlled dawn. He stood, the weariness vanished, the armor back in place. "Get some rest, Mara. We have a shipment arriving tomorrow. I'll need you alert." He left, and I sat alone in the darkening library, wondering when I'd started seeing him as anything other than my enemy. Wondering when survival had started feeling like something more complicated than hate. The shipment turned out to be trouble. I'd learned to recognize the signs: increased guard presence. "Mr." DeLuca's mood turning sharp and focused, whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Something was wrong, and the entire household moved like a body bracing for impact. Late that night, I was summoned to the gardens, a secluded corner hidden behind hedges where security cameras had convenient blind spots. "Mr." DeLuca stood there with a phone in one hand and a gun in the other, his face carved from stone. "Walk with me," he ordered. We moved through manicured pathways while he spoke in rapid Italian to someone on the phone, a conversation that escalated from tense to furious. When he finally hung up, his jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "One of my lieutenants betrayed me," he said without preamble. "Sold information to the Marchetti family about tonight's shipment. They're planning to intercept it, violently." My stomach dropped. "What are you going to do?" "Handle it." He stopped walking, turning to face me in the moonlight. "But I'm telling you because you need to understand something, Mara. The reason I keep you close, the reason I don't let you leave, it's not just about your loyalty to me. It's about protecting you from becoming leverage against me. I don't understand. If my enemies know I value you, they'll use you to hurt me. They'll take you, torture you, kill you just to prove they can, just to make a point." His expression was grim. "By keeping you here, by making you invisible to the outside world, I keep you safe. The oath protects you as much as it binds you. I never asked for your protection." "No, but you have it anyway." He glanced at his watch, that platinum timepiece engraved with his family motto. "The world I live in doesn't offer freedom, Mara. Only degrees of survival. I'm offering you the best chance at both." Before I could respond, gunfire erupted in the distance. He moved instantly, pulling me behind him, gun raised. Shadows exploded across the grounds. Men in tactical gear. A coordinated assault. The same chaos as before, but worse. Closer. Alarms shrieked. Guards returned fire. The beautiful gardens transformed into a war zone. "Stay with me," Mr. DeLuca commanded, and I did because what choice did I have? As he moved through the chaos with lethal precision. We made it to the house, to his private study, where he shoved me toward a hidden panel in the wall. "Safe room, go. What about you? I'll handle this." His eyes were hard, focused, the man I'd seen during the last attack. "That's an order, Oathkeeper." The panel swung open to reveal a reinforced chamber. He pushed me inside and I grabbed his wrist without thinking, feeling his pulse hammer beneath my fingers. "Don't die," I heard myself say. "Please." Something flickered in his expression, surprise. Maybe, or something softer. "I'll do my best." Then the door closed, and I was alone in the dark, listening to the battle rage outside. Hours passed. I counted my heartbeats, counted my breaths, counted all the ways this could end badly. When the door finally opened, I nearly collapsed with relief. Mr. DeLuca stood there, alive but bleeding from a cut on his arm, soot streaking his face. "It's over. Did you?" "Handled it." His voice was flat, exhausted. "The traitor's dead. The Marchettis learned their lesson. My shipment made it through." He offered his hand, helping me out of the safe room. "And you listened to orders for once. I'm impressed." I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or both. "I thought you were going to die. Would that have bothered you?" He was watching me too carefully, searching for something. "Yes," I admitted before I could stop myself. I don't know why, but yes. His expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. Vulnerable, surprised, almost hopeful. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, close enough to feel each other's breath, the space between us charged with something I refused to name. Then he stepped back, the walls rising again. "You should rest. Dawn's coming." I nodded, but as I reached the door, I looked back. He was standing by the window, silhouetted against the false dawn, looking as trapped as I felt. "Mr. DeLuca?" "Dante," he said quietly. "When it's just us, call me Dante." It felt like a gift, like a crack in his armor, like the beginning of something dangerous. "Good night, Dante." "Good night, Oathkeeper." I left before the softness in his voice could undo me completely, but the softness didn't last. 2 days later, everything shattered. I found Lena in the kitchen, pale and shaking, her eyes red from crying. "What's wrong?" I asked, reaching for her. She flinched away. "Nothing. I'm fine." "Lena, just leave me alone, Mara." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand what it's like for the rest of us. How much harder you've made everything. What are you talking about?" But she just shook her head and fled, leaving me confused and increasingly worried. The hammer fell that night. Guards stormed into my room, not the ones I recognized, but cold-faced strangers. They hauled me from bed, ignoring my protests, dragging me through hallways I'd never seen before, downstairs, into basements, into parts of the mansion that smelled of earth and secrets. They threw me into a stone-walled room, lit by a single bulb. The door slammed shut, locked. I was alone for hours or maybe minutes. Time stretched, strange in. Fear before the door opened again and Dante walked in, flanked by 2 guards and carrying a folder. His face was carved from ice. "You want to explain this?" He threw the folder at my feet. Photographs spilled out me in the gardens, me in the library, me standing near Dante's study, and beside those images, documents detailing guard rotations, security protocols, shipment schedules, information I'd never seen, never touched, never even knew existed. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Lena sold you out." His voice was a blade. "Told my security that you've been stealing information, passing secrets to my enemies, that you're a spy planted by the Marchettis to bring me down from the inside. That's insane. I would never... Wouldn't you?" He stepped closer, his rage barely controlled. "You're smart enough. You hate me enough. You've had access to my office, my meetings, my private spaces. You saved my life during an attack-perfect cover for an embedded operative. I saved your life because I didn't want you to die." The words tore from my throat, not for some tactical advantage, because despite everything you've done, I don't want you dead. "Then explain the evidence." "I can't," It's fabricated. I was shaking, terrified, furious. Lena's lying, or someone's framing me, or the realization hit like a fist. Your enemies are trying to turn you against me. If you kill me, you lose someone loyal. If you keep me, you'll always doubt me. Either way, they win. Dante's jaw worked, his hands clenching into fists. For a terrible moment, I thought he'd strike me. Instead, he turned to the guards. Take her to the lower wing. Solitary. No contact with anyone until I've sorted this out. Dante, please. That's Mr. De Luca to you. His eyes were stranger's eyes, cold and implacable. You'll stay there until I know the truth, and if you are a traitor. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Then God help you, because I won't. They dragged me away, and this time I screamed for him to listen, to believe me, to remember I'd stood beside him when fire rained down, but he'd already turned his back. The lower wing was everything the mansion pretended not to be, bare stone. No windows. Cells instead of rooms. They threw me into one and locked the door, leaving me in darkness broken only by a thin strip of light under the door. I sank to the floor and finally let despair take me. I'd saved his life, trusted him with fragments of my heart, and he'd thrown me into a cage the moment doubt whispered in his ear. The oath bound me to him, but it couldn't protect me from him. And that, I realized through tears, was the cruelest trap of all. They kept me there for 3 days. No one spoke to me. Guards brought food and water, left it, disappeared. The silence was worse than torture. It gave me nothing to fight, nothing to rage against, just my own spiraling thoughts and the growing certainty that I'd die in this cell, forgotten. On the 3rd day, Dante came. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him, exhausted, disheveled, the armor of control cracking at the edges. He stood outside the bars, just watching me for a long moment. I know the truth, he finally said. Lena was working for the Marchettis. They paid her to plant the evidence, to turn me against you. She confessed when my people persuaded her. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty. Is she dead? Does it matter? Yes. I met his eyes through the bars. Because that's the difference between us. You ask if I'm capable of murder, I ask if you're capable of mercy. He flinched like I'd struck him. Then he unlocked the cell and stepped inside, kneeling in front of me so we were eye level. I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. Should have known better than to believe fabricated evidence. His voice was raw, stripped of defenses. But in my world, trust is a luxury that gets you killed. I had to be certain. So you threw me in a cage. Yes. He didn't make excuses. And I'll never be able to take that back. Never be able to undo what those 3 days cost you. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed tears from my cheeks when I didn't. But I'm here now, and I'm telling you I believe in your loyalty. I trust your oath. My oath. The word tasted like ash. Is that all I am to you? A promise on paper? No. His thumb traced my jaw, the touch unbearably gentle. You're the only real thing in a world of lies. You're the girl who saved my life without thinking about the cost. You're my oath keeper. His voice dropped to a whisper. And you're the only person I've wanted to set free, even though it would destroy me to lose you. The confession hung between us, dangerous and honest. Then let me go, I breathed. If you care at all, sign the release, end the contract. Let me take my brother and disappear. I can't. Pain crossed his face. Because the moment you leave my protection, you become a target. Every enemy I have will come for you to hurt me, to leverage information, to punish me for the crime of caring about someone. He caught my hand, pressing it to his chest where his heart hammered. The oath keeps you safe, and I'm selfish enough, cruel enough, to keep you in this cage even though I know it's killing you. That's not protection, it's possession. I know. He closed his eyes. I know, and I can't stop. Because losing you would. He cut himself off, shaking his head. I'm sorry, Mara, for all of it. He stood, offering his hand. This time, when I took it, it felt less like surrender, and more like choosing the devil I knew over the abyss. He led me out of the cell, up to the main house, back to my room that suddenly felt like a palace after 3 days in hell. At the door, he paused. Your brother is fine. I've had guards watching him the entire time. He pulled an envelope from his pocket, recent photos, medical reports. He's healing well. I took it with shaking hands, the proof that Marco was alive and safe more valuable than any apology. "Thank you," I whispered. "It's not enough, but it's all I have to give." He turned to leave, then stopped. "The lower wing doesn't exist for you anymore. You'll never go back there, no matter what happens. That's my promise." Promises from monsters don't mean much. "No." He smiled, sad and true. "But oaths do, and I swear it." He left, and I collapsed on my bed, clutching Marco's photos to my chest. I'd survived the cage within the cage, survived Dante's doubt and my own despair. But something had broken in those 3 days. Some part of me that still believed I could escape, could reclaim my old life, could become free again. The oath wasn't just binding me to Dante anymore. It was becoming part of who I was, oathkeeper, not captive. The girl who stayed because leaving would destroy the fragile, broken man who held her chains. I hated him for it. And somewhere, in the darkest corners of my heart, I understood him. That understanding felt like the final lock clicking shut. The days after my release were strange. Dante kept his distance, but I felt his attention constantly. Guards stationed near my door. Security protocols tightened. He was overcompensating, trying to prove he could protect me even from himself. But protection couldn't stop the nightmares, couldn't erase the memory of cold stone and darkness and abandonment. 1 week after my release, I woke screaming from a dream where the cell door never opened. I was gasping, crying, too loud, and then Dante was there, in my room, pulling me against his chest and murmuring words in Italian that sounded like apologies and prayers. "I've got you," he repeated, over and over. "You're safe. I've got you." I should have pushed him away, should have been furious at the intrusion. Instead, I clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world, and he held me until the panic subsided and dawn painted the room gold. "I can't do this," I finally whispered against his shoulder. "Can't keep pretending I'm anything but your prisoner." "I know." His arms tightened fractionally. "What if I could give you something? Not freedom, I can't risk that, but something closer. A choice." I pulled back to look at him. "What choice?" "Your brother is strong enough to travel. I could move him here to the estate, to a private wing with medical staff. You could see him every day, care for him yourself." His eyes searched mine. "You'd still be bound by the oath, still under my protection, but you'd have the person you sacrificed everything for. You'd have your family." Hope flared, painful and bright. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm trying to be less of a monster." His smile was broken. "And because watching you break is harder than I thought. You'd let Marco come here? Let him see what you are, what this place is? He'd see what you need him to see, a secure estate where his sister works. Nothing more." Dante's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I can't give you freedom, Mara. But I can give you this. Say yes." I should have questioned his motives. Should have seen the trap: more leverage, more chains, tying me to this place through love instead of just obligation. But I was so tired of fighting, so desperate for something good. "Yes," I breathed. "Bring him here." Dante's expression transformed relief in something warmer, something I refused to name. "Thank you." "For what?" "For trusting me again, even a little." He left before I could tell him trust wasn't what this was. It was survival. It was choosing the least terrible option in a world with no good ones. But when Marco arrived 3 days later, thin but smiling, his eyes bright with health I'd bought with my freedom, I couldn't regret it. I held my brother and cried, and for the first time since signing that damned contract, I felt something like peace. Even if peace tasted like surrender, even if the bars of my cage were gilded with love instead of steel, even if the man watching from the doorway, his expression soft with something dangerously close to affection, owned every piece of my future. I was home. I was trapped. I was exactly where Dante had always planned for me to be. And God help me, I couldn't bring myself to hate him anymore. The oath had become my truth. And truth, I was learning, was just another word for chains you stopped fighting. Marco's presence changed everything. He was sunshine in the shadowed mansion, laughing, curious, entirely unaware of the darkness that funded his safety. Dante had given him a suite in the family wing, decorated it with books and art supplies, hired tutors and physical therapists. To Marco, this was just an eccentric, wealthy household where his sister had found secure employment. He never saw the guards' guns, never heard the whispered conversations about territories and vengeance, never knew the beautiful prison for what it was, and I protected that ignorance fiercely. But Marco's arrival did something unexpected. It softened Dante in ways I hadn't thought possible. He'd visit my brother's wing, bringing gifts, discussing books, teaching him chess with unexpected patience. I'd watch them from doorways, this monster who'd caged me treating my brother with genuine kindness, and my hatred would fracture a little more. "He's good to Marco," I told Dante one evening after my brother had fallen asleep. We stood in the garden where violence had once raged, now peaceful beneath stars. "Marco's innocent," Dante's voice was quiet. "He deserves better than this world, better than me. Then why keep us here?" "Because he's safest here." He turned to face me, moonlight carving his features in silver and shadow. "And because I'm selfish enough to want you close, even knowing it's wrong. You could let us go, give us money, protection, a new start somewhere far away. You'd be dead within a month." His certainty was absolute. "The Marchettis know your face now. Know you matter to me. The moment you leave my protection, they'll take you apart piece by piece just to hear me scream." His jaw tightened. "So yes, I'm keeping you. Not because the oath demands it, but because the alternative is watching you die. That's not love. That's obsession." I never said it was love. But something in his eyes told a different truth, one that terrified me more than any threat. "It's survival, Mara. For both of us." I wanted to argue, wanted to rage against the logic that made my cage seem necessary. But I'd seen his world's violence firsthand, knew the bodies buried beneath beauty, and some part of me, the part that had stopped fighting, understood he might be right. "The oath," I said slowly. "Oath above all. That's your family motto." It was my grandfather's. He believed loyalty was the only thing that mattered to family, to the code, to the promises we make. Dante pulled his watch from his pocket, the platinum catching starlight. "He gave me this the day I took over the family. Told me men without oaths are just animals. That our word is what makes us human. Even when that word binds someone against their will? Especially then." He handed me the watch. "Let me trace the engraving. Because honoring an oath, even a terrible one, proves you're stronger than your circumstances. It proves you're someone who can be trusted. Is that what I am to you? Proof you're trustworthy?" "No." He took the watch back, closed it in his fist. "You're proof I'm not completely lost, that I can still care about someone more than I care about control." His voice dropped. "And that terrifies me more than any enemy ever could." The confession hung between us like smoke. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed, some crisis demanding his attention. He left with a last lingering look, and I stood alone in the garden, wondering when I'd started seeing him as something other than my captor, wondering when caring had become more dangerous than hating. The answer came the night everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at 2 a.m. Marco's voice, frightened and confused. "Mara, there are men outside my door. They're saying I need to come with them, that you're in danger." Ice flooded my veins. "Don't open the door. Don't trust anyone except..." The line went dead. I ran barefoot, still in my nightgown, terror drowning thought. Guards tried to stop me, but I was fury and panic combined. I reached Marco's wing to find his door open, his room empty, no sign of struggle except his phone discarded on the floor, and a note on his pillow, written in elegant script. Asterisk, "We have the boy. Come to the North Warehouse alone, or we start mailing pieces." Asterisk. The world dissolved. I was moving before thought caught up, grabbing Marco's phone, running for the garage, hot-wiring a car with skills I'd learned from a rebellious youth I'd almost forgotten. Alarms shrieked behind me, but I was already gone, racing down the coastal road toward the industrial district where nightmares wore human faces. The North Warehouse loomed against the night sky, abandoned, decrepit, perfect for violence no one would witness. I parked and ran inside, my heart a drum counting down to catastrophe. Marco was tied to a chair in the center of the vast space, blood trickling from his nose, his eyes wide with terror. Around him stood 6 men in expensive suits. Marchetti soldiers, I recognized them from photos in Dante's files. And at the front, smiling like the snake he was, stood the silver-haired man from the gala, the one who'd ordered a cleanup. Mara Castellano. His voice was oil and poison, the famous oathkeeper, De Luca's little pet. "Let my brother go." My voice was steadier than my hands. "This is between you and Dante. Marco's innocent. Innocent? He laughed. No one in DeLuca's orbit is innocent. You chose his world. Your brother pays the price. Please, here's what's going to happen. He produced a knife, letting it catch the light. You're going to call DeLuca. Tell him to meet us here, alone, unarmed. And when he arrives, we'll kill him slowly while you and your brother watch. Then we'll kill you too, but we'll make sure it hurts. Marco sobbed, the sound breaking my heart. I thought of the oath, of Dante's promises, of every terrible choice that had led me to this moment. And I made a decision. No. The word rang through the warehouse. You want Dante? He's probably already on his way. Probably tracked my phone. Probably bringing an army. You'll be dead in minutes. I stepped forward, drawing their attention. But if you let Marco go now, I'll stay. I'll be your hostage. Better leverage, anyway, the girl DeLuca actually cares about. Mara, no. Marco's voice cracked. Trust me, I told him, praying he understood. Praying Dante was as predictable as I hoped. The silver-haired man considered, knife still gleaming. Interesting proposition. But glass exploded overhead. Dante dropped through the skylight like an avenging angel, guards rappelling behind him, gunfire erupting in controlled bursts. The Marchetti soldiers scattered, returning fire, and the warehouse became a war zone of smoke and chaos and death. I ran for Marco, cutting his bonds with a shard of broken glass. Go, run. I'm not leaving you. Go. I shoved him toward the exit, toward the guards Dante had positioned there, toward safety I'd bought with my defiance. Then hands grabbed me, yanked me back. The silver-haired man had me, knife to my throat, using me as a shield as he backed toward his own exit. Tell DeLuca to stand down, he hissed in my ear, or I open your throat. Across the warehouse, through the smoke, Dante stood frozen. His gun was raised, his soldiers ready, but he couldn't take the shot, not without risking me. Our eyes met. In that moment, I saw everything, his rage, his fear, his terrible, helpless love for something he couldn't protect. I'd become exactly what he'd warned me about. Leverage, weakness, the one thing his enemies could use to destroy him. And suddenly I understood. The oath wasn't about binding me. It was about protecting both of us from this exact moment. Do it. I called to Dante, my voice carrying across the chaos. Take the shot. End this. Mara, I'm not worth your empire. Tears streamed down my face. I'm not worth dying for. You taught me that oaths matter more than people, so honor yours. Protect your world. Let me go. Never. The word was torn from him, raw and absolute. Put down your weapons, he shouted to his guards. All of you, let them walk. Dante, no. But his soldiers were already complying, lowering their guns, giving the Marchetti crew space to retreat. The knife at my throat eased fractionally. Smart choice, DeLuca, my captor laughed. Love makes you weak. Your father would be disappointed. My father, Dante said quietly, is dead, and you're about to join him. Everything happened at once. Dante's shot went high, purposefully missing, but close enough to make my captor flinch. In that half-second of distraction, I dropped, dead weight, pulling free of his grip. Dante's second shot didn't miss. Neither did the barrage from his soldiers, no longer held back by my presence in the line of fire. Bodies fell, smoke cleared, and when the chaos settled, Dante was there, pulling me against him with hands that shook, checking me for injuries with desperation that spoke louder than words ever could. You insane, brilliant, infuriating woman, he breathed against my hair. You told me to shoot you. I told you to honor your oath. I was shaking too, adrenaline and terror and relief crushing my chest. Told you to choose your world over me. I chose you. His arms tightened. I will always choose you. Oath be damned. That's not. I pulled back to see his face, to understand. Your motto, oath above all. I'm done with that motto. His hands framed my face, fierce and tender. You're what matters. You and your brother and this impossible, inconvenient feeling that makes me want to burn my empire down if it means keeping you safe. That's love, you idiot. I know. He smiled, broken and real. Terrible timing, isn't it? I should have pulled away. Should have been furious he'd risked everything for me. Instead, I kissed him desperate and grateful and terrified, pouring 3 months of fear and fury, an unwanted feeling into the space where our lips met. He kissed back like I was oxygen, like I was salvation. like every oath he'd ever sworn had led to this moment. When we finally broke apart, the warehouse was secure, Marco was safe with guards outside, and dawn was breaking through the shattered skylight. "I want my freedom," I whispered against his lips. "I know. I want the contract void." The oath ended. My choice returned. "I know." He pressed his forehead to mine. "Ask me. Will you release me?" Dante pulled back, reached into his jacket, and drew out a folded document, my contract, the one I'd signed in desperation and ignorance. With deliberate care, he tore it in half. Then quarters. Then confetti that drifted between us like snow. "You're free, Mara Castellano. No more oath. No more debt. You can walk away right now, and I'll make sure you and Marco are protected, wherever you go." His voice was steady despite the pain in his eyes. "But if you choose to stay, not because of a contract, but because you want to then stay as yourself. Not my employee, not my asset, just mine. If you'll have me." The offer hung between us, terrifying in its honesty. I thought of Marco, safe because of Dante's protection. Thought of the man I'd come to, know beneath the monster, complicated and broken and trying so hard to be better. Thought of my freedom, finally offered without conditions, and the choice that freedom demanded. "I should leave," I said slowly. "Should take Marco and disappear and build a normal life far from your dangerous world." "You should." He didn't argue, didn't try to convince me, just waited. "But I'm tired of running, tired of being powerless." I caught his hands, lacing our fingers together. "And despite everything, despite the cage and the contract and the 3 days in hell, I choose you, not because I'm bound, because I want to be." His expression transformed hope and disbelief in something so tender it hurt to witness. "You're sure?" "No," I admitted. "But I'm choosing anyway. That's what free will is, right? The ability to make terrible decisions." He laughed, the sound shocked and genuine, and pulled me close again. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you don't regret this. You'd better." I smiled against his shoulder. "Because the moment I do, I'm gone. No oath to hold me anymore. Promise?" "Promise." We stood there as sunrise flooded the warehouse, turning destruction to gold, two people who'd found something precious in the ruins of control and captivity. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Wasn't even a good ending. Probably just two broken people choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. But it was ours, built on ashes and oaths, and the stubborn refusal to let circumstances define us, and for now, that was enough. 3 months later, I stood at the train station with a packed bag and Marco beside me. Dante had kept every promise: protection without possession, freedom without abandonment. Marco was enrolled in a good school, far from the mansion but close enough for visits. I'd found an apartment in the city, small but mine, a life I was building on my own terms. But leaving still hurt. Dante stood across the platform, hands in his pockets, watching me with eyes that held too many unspoken words. We'd agreed on this space for me to discover who I was outside his world, time to prove my choice was real, and not just Stockholm Syndrome wearing love's mask. 2 weeks, I told him, the same thing I said every time. "Then I'll come back." 2 weeks, he agreed. "And Mara? If you decide not to come back, if you find something better out there, I'll understand." Liar. But I smiled. "You'd come drag me back, oath or no oath." "Probably." He stepped closer, not quite touching, the space between us charged with everything we'd survived together. "But I'd let you choose again. Every time. Because that's the difference between binding someone and loving them." I kissed him, goodbye, soft and lingering, and full of promise. "I'll be back. I always come back." "I know." He pressed something into my palm, his platinum watch, the one engraved with his family motto. "Hold on to this for me." I turned it over, watching light dance across the engraving. But something was different. The inscription had been changed, no longer times oath, above all asterisk, but something new. Asterisk, choice above all. Asterisk, tears pricked my eyes. "You changed it. I learned from an excellent teacher." His smile was crooked, vulnerable. "Turns out love's a better master than duty ever was." The train whistle blew. Marco tugged my hand, eager and oblivious to the weight of this parting. I stepped back, clutching the watch, memorizing Dante's face in morning light. 2 weeks, I repeated. "I'll be counting," he promised. I boarded, found my seat, pressed my hand to the window as the train pulled away. Dante stood on the platform, watching until I was just a memory on the horizon. The watch was warm in my palm. I traced the new engraving, thinking of contracts and cages, and the man who'd learned to love me by letting me go. The story wasn't over. It might never be over. Love built on such complicated foundations rarely found clean endings. But it was mine, my choice, my freedom, my future written in decisions instead of obligations. And in 2 weeks, I'd come back. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Because sometimes freedom meant choosing your chains. And sometimes the person who once held your leash learned to walk beside you instead. The train carried me toward a horizon I'd build myself. But the watch in my hand, warm and weighty and inscribed with hard-won wisdom, reminded me that some bonds transcended contracts. Some oaths lived in hearts instead of paper. And some prisoners chose their cages, then discovered they were never cages at all, just doors waiting to be opened from the inside.